My wife's friends crashed our honeymoon plans. So I took the trip solo. Now they're trying to set her up with her ex, and I'm considering divorce. I, 32ME, have been with my wife Karen, 29F, for 4 years, married for 6 months. Our relationship started off in an unusual way. We met at a local charity event where we were both volunteering. I was immediately drawn to Karen's vibrant personality and infectious laugh. We hit it off right away, talking for hours about our shared interest in travel, cooking, and classic movies. After the event, I asked Karen out for coffee. To my surprise, she hesitated. She said she needed to consult with her squad first. I thought she was joking, but she was dead serious. Karen explained that she has a very close-knit group of friends from college that she calls her squad. There are 5 of them: Karen, Emily, Jessica, Megan, and Rachel. They've been inseparable since freshman year when they all lived on the same dorm floor. I found it a bit odd that a grown woman needed her friend's permission to go on a date, but I figured it was just a quirky thing she did. Little did I know, this was just the tip of the iceberg. After getting the squad's approval, Karen and I started dating. I quickly realized that the squad was a major part of Karen's life. They had weekly brunches, daily group chats, and seemed to know every detail of each other's lives. At first, I thought it was nice that Karen had such close friends. My own friend group had drifted apart after college as we all got busy with careers and relationships, so I admired their bond. However, as time went on, I started to notice some concerning patterns. Karen rarely made any decisions without consulting the squad first. Whether it was what to wear to a work event, which car to buy, or even what to order at a restaurant, she always sought their input. I tried to talk to her about it, but she insisted it was normal and that I wouldn't understand because I'm not as close with my friends. There were times when the squad's influence directly affected our relationship. Once, I planned a surprise weekend getaway for our anniversary. Karen was excited at first, but then suddenly changed her mind after talking to the squad. Apparently, they had planned a girls' trip that same weekend, and Karen didn't want to miss it. I was disappointed, but I tried to be understanding. Another time, we had a minor argument about household chores. Before I knew it, Karen had shared all the details with the squad. For days after, I received cold looks and passive-aggressive comments from her friends. It felt like I was dating not just Karen, but the entire squad. Despite these challenges, I loved Karen deeply. She was kind, funny, and we shared so many common interests. I hoped that as our relationship grew stronger, she would naturally start to prioritize us more. When I proposed after 2 years of dating, I was thrilled when Karen said yes, after checking with the squad, of course. Our wedding was a beautiful day, but not without squad-related drama. Karen insisted that all 5 squad members be her bridesmaids, which meant I had to scramble to find 2 more groomsmen to even things out. During the reception, the squad basically monopolized Karen's time, making it hard for us to greet other guests together or have any moments alone. After the wedding, I hoped things would change. I thought maybe now that we were married, Karen would start to see us as a unit, a team. But old habits die hard, I guess. Which brings us to the current situation. For our honeymoon, I had planned a romantic 2-week trip to Italy. Karen and I had always talked about visiting Italy together. It was a shared dream of ours to explore the historic streets of Rome, ride a gondola in Venice, and taste wine in Tuscany. I wanted to make it extra special, so I spent months planning the perfect itinerary. I researched the best hotels, booked tours with highly rated local guides, and even arranged for a private cooking class in Florence. I was so excited to surprise Karen with all the details. I imagined us making memories that would last a lifetime, just the 2 of us. Last week, I finally sat Karen down to reveal all the honeymoon plans. I had a whole presentation prepared, complete with a day-by-day itinerary and photos of all the amazing places we'd be staying. To my shock, Karen didn't seem thrilled. She hesitated and then said, "About that, I was thinking maybe we could invite the squad to join us. It would be so much fun to experience Italy together." I was completely blindsided. A honeymoon is supposed to be a special trip for just the newlyweds. I told Karen I wasn't comfortable with her friends coming along and that I wanted it to be just us. She got upset and said I was being selfish. Apparently, she had already mentioned the idea to her friends and they were excited about it. We got into a huge fight about it. Karen accused me of trying to isolate her from her friends. She said that the squad had always dreamed of going to Italy together and this was the perfect opportunity. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I reminded her that we had talked about this trip for years as something just for us. Karen argued that having her friends along wouldn't change anything. We could still do romantic things, but also have fun group activities. I tried to explain that it would fundamentally change the nature of the trip. A honeymoon is supposed to be intimate, a chance for newlyweds to bond. How could we do that with 5 extra people tagging along? The argument escalated from there. Karen said I clearly didn't understand how important her friends were to her. I countered that she didn't seem to understand how important our marriage should be. I pointed out that we'd have the rest of our lives to travel with friends, but this was supposed to be our special trip as newlyweds. In the heat of the moment, I told Karen that if she wanted to go to Italy with her friends instead of me, she was welcome to do so. But it wouldn't be our honeymoon. I said I would go on the trip alone if I had to, but I wasn't changing the plans to accommodate her friends. Karen burst into tears and left to stay with one of her squad members. She's been ignoring my calls and texts for days. Her friends have been posting passive-aggressive stuff on social media about how real friends come first, and some men just don't get it. They've even started sharing old photos of the squad in college, talking about how they've always dreamed of traveling together. I'm starting to wonder if I overreacted. Maybe I should have been more open to compromise. But at the same time, I feel like this is a major issue in our relationship that needs to be addressed. I love Karen, but I'm really frustrated by how enmeshed she is with her friends. I want to feel like a priority in my own marriage. My own friends think Karen is being ridiculous. They say a honeymoon is sacred and her friends are out of line for even considering crashing it. But Karen's friends are fully supporting her, saying I'm trying to come between their friendship. I'm at a loss for what to do. Should I just give in and let her bring her squad on our honeymoon to keep the peace? Or do I stand my ground and risk further damaging our new marriage? I never thought I'd be having this fight with my wife just months after our wedding. AET for refusing to cancel our honeymoon plans? Update. 1. It's been about a week since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for the supportive comments and advice. Reading through everything really helped me gain some perspective on the situation. After a few days of silence, Karen finally agreed to meet up and talk things through. We decided to meet at a neutral location, a small park near our apartment. I thought being in a public place might help keep things calm, but in hindsight, it probably wasn't the best idea because it limited how open we could be. When Karen arrived, I could tell she had been crying. Despite everything, my heart ached seeing her upset. We sat down on a bench, and for a few moments, neither of us knew what to say. Finally, I broke the silence and tried to calmly explain my position again, that I love her, but I felt our honeymoon should be about us as a couple, not a friend group vacation. I reminded Karen of how long we had talked about this trip, how it was supposed to be a special start to our married life together. I even pulled out my phone and showed her some of the special experiences I had planned. A sunset boat ride in Venice, a private tour of the Vatican museums, a hot air balloon ride over the Tuscan countryside. I hoped that seeing these plans would remind her of why we wanted to do this trip together in the first place. Karen listened, but I could tell she was getting defensive. She accused me of never making an effort with her friends and said I was threatened by how close they were. She brought up times when I had seemed annoyed by their constant presence or had chosen not to join their group activities. I was taken aback by this. I pointed out that I've always been cordial with her friends, even when they've been less than welcoming to me. I reminded her of several times I'd invited them to our home for dinner or joined their outings, but Karen wasn't having it. She said if I really cared, I'd want to include the most important people in her life in our special moments. That's when things took a turn. Karen revealed that she had actually already invited her friends on the trip without telling me. Apparently, they've even started booking flights and accommodations. I was furious that she had gone behind my back like that. It felt like a complete betrayal of trust. Karen tried to defend her actions, saying she was just excited and got carried away. She said her friends had been so supportive throughout our relationship and wedding planning, and she wanted to do something special for them. She even suggested that maybe her friends could just join us for part of the trip, not the whole 2 weeks. But I wasn't buying it. This wasn't just about the honeymoon anymore. It was about the fundamental issues in our relationship. I told Karen that her actions showed a complete lack of respect for me and our marriage. I asked her how she would feel if I had invited my friends on our honeymoon without consulting her. Karen got quiet then. I think she finally started to realize the gravity of what she had done. She tried to apologize, but it felt hollow. I told her I needed some time to think about everything. I ended up leaving the park, telling Karen I needed space. Over the next few days, I did a lot of reflecting on our relationship. I thought back to all the times I had felt like I came second to Karen's friends. The missed date nights because of last-minute squad plans. The times Karen had shared private details of our relationship with her friends without my consent. The way her friends often spoke for her or made decisions on her behalf. I realized this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of Karen prioritizing her friends over our marriage. It made me question whether she was really ready for the commitment of marriage. After much deliberation, I made a difficult decision. I called Karen and told her that I would be going on the Italy trip alone. I said she was free to go with her friends if she wanted, but I wouldn't be joining. I also said we needed to seriously reevaluate our relationship and suggested we take a break. Karen was upset, but didn't really fight me on it. She said she needed time to think too. So now we're on a break, and I'm preparing for a solo trip to Italy. It's not how I imagined my honeymoon would go, but I think it's for the best. I need the time away to clear my head and decide if this marriage is truly what I want. I've started packing for the trip, and it's been an emotional process. Every item I put in my suitcase reminds me of the plans I had made for us. The nice clothes for fancy dinners, the hiking boots for exploring ancient ruins, the swimsuits for the Amalfi Coast. It's hard not to think about what could have been. My friends have been incredibly supportive. They've been checking in on me regularly and even offered to come stay with me for a few days before I leave. I'm grateful for their support, but it also highlights the difference between my friendships and Karen's. My friends respect my relationship and would never dream of intruding on something as personal as a honeymoon. As for Karen's friends, they've been surprisingly quiet since I announced my decision to go alone. Part of me wonders if they're finally realizing they crossed a line, or maybe they're just busy planning their own trip to Italy. Either way, I'm trying not to dwell on it. I'm leaving for Italy in a few days. I'm nervous about traveling alone, but also excited in a way. This trip will be a chance for me to rediscover myself and think about what I really want in life and in a partner. I'm hurt and angry, but also sad. I really thought Karen and I had something special. Now I'm not so sure. I'll update again after my trip if there are any major developments. For now, I'm focusing on packing and preparing myself emotionally for this solo journey. Thanks again for all the support. It means more than you know. Update 2. I'm back from my Italy trip and have some updates to share. The trip itself was bittersweet. Italy was even more beautiful than I had imagined. The history, the art, the food, it was all incredible. But there were definitely moments where I wished Karen was there to share the experience. I tried to stick to the original itinerary as much as possible. In Rome, I visited the Colosseum and the Vatican, marveling at the ancient architecture and priceless artworks. In Florence, I took that cooking class I had booked for us, learning to make pasta from scratch, and feeling a bit out of place as the only solo traveler in a class full of couples. In Venice, I took the gondola ride, sitting alone in a boat meant for two and trying not to feel too melancholy as we glided through the romantic canals. Throughout the trip, I found myself thinking a lot about Karen and our relationship. I missed her laugh, the way her eyes lit up when she saw something beautiful, even the silly little arguments we'd have over which gelato flavor to try. But I also couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal over what she had done. While I was away, Karen stayed with her friends. From what I've heard through mutual acquaintances, they spent the whole time bad-mouthing me and convincing Karen she'd be better off without me. Apparently, they even tried to set her up with one of their co-workers, a guy named Jake who Karen had briefly dated in college before we met. When I got back, jet-lagged and emotionally drained, Karen asked to meet. I agreed, thinking maybe the time apart had given her some perspective. I was wrong. We met at a cafe near our apartment, and as soon as we sat down, Karen launched into a rehearsed-sounding speech about how I was controlling and trying to come between her and her friends. She said she couldn't be with someone who didn't understand that her friends were her chosen family. I was floored. I calmly told Karen that I had never tried to control her or come between her friendships. I just wanted healthy boundaries and to feel like a priority in my own marriage. But it was clear Karen's friends had gotten in her head. She wasn't hearing anything I was saying. The conversation devolved from there. Karen demanded I apologize for ruining the honeymoon by not letting her friends come. I refused and said she should be the one apologizing for going behind my back. We went back and forth for a while, rehashing old arguments and bringing up past grievances. Finally, frustrated and exhausted, I said I thought we should seriously consider divorce. That seemed to snap Karen out of it a bit. She got quiet and asked if I really meant that. I said I did, that I couldn't stay in a marriage where I constantly felt like I came second to my wife's friends. Karen started crying and said she needed time to think. So now we're in limbo. Karen moved out temporarily to get space. She's staying with Emily, one of her squad members. Her friends are still posting nasty things about me online, sharing vague quotes about toxic men and knowing your worth. I'm trying to stay above it all, but it's hard. I do still love Karen, When things are good between us, they're really good. We have so much in common and can talk for hours about everything and nothing, but I don't know if our marriage can recover from this. I'm not sure I even want it to at this point. I've started individual counseling to help process everything. My therapist thinks Karen may have some codependency issues with her friend group. She suggested couples counseling if we decide to try working things out. I'm open to it, but only if Karen is truly willing to examine her behavior and make changes. For now, I'm focusing on myself and trying to heal. I've been throwing myself into work and picking up old hobbies that I had let fall by the wayside. I've started playing guitar again and even joined a local recreational soccer league. It feels good to be doing things for myself. This whole situation has been eye-opening and painful. I never imagined I'd be contemplating divorce just months into my marriage, but I also know I deserve to be with someone who prioritizes our relationship. I'll update again once there's a more definitive resolution, one way or the other. Thanks for listening. Update 3. It's been a few months since my last update, and I'm finally ready to share what's happened. Karen and I have officially decided to divorce. It was a difficult decision, but I believe it's the right one. After my last update, Karen agreed to try couples counseling. We had a few sessions, and at first it seemed like we were making progress. Karen admitted that she had crossed a line by inviting her friends on our honeymoon without consulting me. We had some productive discussions about boundaries and priorities in our marriage. For a brief moment, I felt hopeful that we might be able to work things out. But as we continued with the counseling, it quickly became clear that Karen wasn't really open to change. She continued to prioritize her friends and refused to set any boundaries with them. The counselor tried to help her see how her behavior was damaging our marriage, but Karen just got defensive. She insisted that her friends were her support system, and that I was being unreasonable for asking her to distance herself from them. The final straw came when I discovered that Karen had been sharing intimate details about our counseling sessions with her friends. They were giving her advice on what to say and how to handle me. I felt completely betrayed. These sessions were supposed to be private, a safe space for us to work on our marriage. When I confronted Karen about it, she didn't even seem to understand why it was wrong. She said her friends were just trying to help and accused me of overreacting. That's when I knew it was over. I couldn't stay in a marriage where I couldn't trust my own wife. We're now in the process of dividing assets and finalizing the divorce. It's been tough, especially because Karen's friends have been spreading rumors about me in our social circle. They've been telling people that I was emotionally abusive and tried to isolate Karen from her support system. It's frustrating because it's so far from the truth, but I'm trying to take the high road and not engage in the drama. The hardest part has been dealing with the shared memories and dreams we had. We had talked about starting a family soon, and now that future is gone. I've had to cancel the lease on the new apartment we were going to move into next month. Even small things like the coffee maker we got as a wedding gift bring up painful emotions. I've been leaning on my own friends and family for support. They've been amazing, helping me move out of our shared apartment and listening when I need to vent. My brother even offered to let me stay with him for a while until I get back on my feet. As for Karen, last I heard she had moved in with Emily permanently. Apparently, they're planning to get a bigger place so the whole squad can spend more time together. Part of me feels sad for her, wondering if she'll ever be able to have a healthy romantic relationship with how enmeshed she is with her friends. But I know that's not my problem anymore. Looking back, I can see now that there were red flags from the beginning. I ignored them because I loved Karen and thought things would change after we got married. I've learned a lot from this experience about the importance of boundaries in relationships and trusting my own instincts. I'm sad about how things turned out, but I'm also hopeful for the future. I'm looking forward to moving on and hopefully finding a partner who values our relationship as much as I do. For now, I'm focusing on healing and rediscovering who I am as an individual. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, but knowing I had people rooting for me, even if they were strangers on the internet, made a big difference. I may not update again unless something significant happens, but I want you all to know how much your kindness and advice has meant to me during this difficult time. Story 2. I was called controlling for protecting my sister from her abusive ex. Then, his ex-girlfriend reached out with a shocking truth. 28F. Never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I am. I grew up in a small town with my parents and younger sister Lillian, 25F. Our childhood was pretty typical. We had our share of sibling rivalries and fights, but we were always there for each other when it mattered. I remember when Lillian was 10, she fell off her bike and broke her arm. I was 13 at the time, and I stayed with her in the hospital all night, holding her hand and telling her stories to distract her from the pain. Our parents, John, 55M, and Mary, 53F, were always supportive of us. Dad worked as a high school teacher, and Mom ran a small bakery in town. They taught us the importance of family, hard work, and looking out for each other. Every Sunday, we'd have a big family dinner where we'd talk about our week and plan for the future. As we grew older, Lillian and I remained close even when I went off to college. I studied business management while Lillian stayed in our hometown to help Mom with the bakery. We'd call each other at least once a week, and I'd come home for holidays and long weekends. Things changed when Lillian started dating Max, 27M, about 3 years ago. They met at a local coffee shop where Max worked as a barista. Lillian was smitten from the start. She'd call me, gushing about how charming and funny he was. I was happy for her, but something about Max made me uneasy from the beginning. I first met Max at our parents' anniversary dinner. He was polite and seemed to get along well with our family, but I noticed how he'd subtly cut Lillian off when she was speaking, or how his eyes would narrow when she talked to other men. These were small things, and I brushed them off, thinking I was being overprotective. Over the next few months, I saw Lillian less and less. She'd cancel our weekly video calls saying she was busy with Max. When we did talk, she seemed distracted and anxious. I tried to ask her about it, but she'd brush off my concerns, saying everything was fine. About a year into their relationship, I came home for Mom's birthday. Lillian looked tired and had lost weight. When I hugged her, I felt her flinch. Later that night, I overheard Max berating her for talking too much to our cousin at the party. I confronted Lillian about it, but she defended Max, saying he was just stressed about work. I tried to talk to our parents about my concerns, but they thought I was overreacting. Dad said every couple has their ups and downs, and Mom was just happy that Lillian had found someone who made her happy. I felt like I was going crazy, seeing things that no one else seemed to notice. Things came to a head 6 months ago. It was a Tuesday night, and I was working late on a project when my phone rang. It was Lillian, and she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Between sobs, she told me that Max had been emotionally abusive for months. He'd been controlling her every move, monitoring her phone, and isolating her from friends and family. That night, he'd gotten angry because she'd liked a male coworker's Facebook post and had thrown her phone against the wall. I immediately got in my car and drove the 2 hours to Lillian's apartment. When I arrived, Max was there, and he was furious. He yelled at Lillian for calling me and tried to block the door when I tried to get Lillian out. I stood my ground and told him if he didn't move, I'd call the police. Eventually, Lillian gathered some clothes, and we left. On the drive back to my place, Lillian opened up about the extent of Max's abuse. He had gradually taken control of her finances, convincing her to quit her job at the bakery because he said it was beneath her. He'd check her phone regularly and accuse her of cheating if she talked to any male friends. He'd even threatened to hurt himself if she ever tried to leave him. I was shocked and angry, both at Max and at myself for not realizing sooner how bad things had gotten. Lillian stayed with me for a few weeks, and during that time, we decided to tell our parents about the situation. We invited them over to my place for dinner, and Lillian bravely shared her story. At first, our parents were stunned. Mom cried, blaming herself for not seeing the signs. Dad was angry and wanted to confront Max immediately. We all agreed that Lillian needed to cut ties with Max completely and focus on healing. For a while, things seemed to be looking up. Lillian started therapy and began to regain some of her confidence. She even talked about going back to school to become a pastry chef, something she'd always dreamed of doing. Our parents were supportive, helping Lillian move her things out of Max's apartment and into a new place of her own. However, about a month after Lillian left him, Max started showing up at our parents' house. He'd bring flowers and apologize, claiming he'd realized his mistakes and wanted to make things right. To my horror, our parents seemed to be softening towards him. They'd tell Lillian that maybe Max deserved another chance, that everyone makes mistakes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I reminded them of everything Max had done, but they dismissed my concerns. Dad said I was being too harsh and that forgiveness was important in life. Mom suggested that maybe Max and Lillian could try couples counseling. Lillian, still vulnerable from the abuse, started to waver in her resolve to leave Max. She'd say things like, maybe he really has changed, or, what if I'm throwing away my only chance at love? It was frustrating and scary to see her considering going back to her abuser. I felt like I was fighting a losing battle. How could our parents, who had always protected us, now be pushing Lillian back into a dangerous situation? I tried talking to Lillian privately, reminding her of how much happier and healthier she'd been since leaving Max, but she seemed torn. The situation came to a head last week. Our parents invited the whole family over for dinner, saying they had a surprise. When Lillian and I arrived, we found Max sitting at the dining table. Lillian froze, and I immediately grabbed her hand, ready to leave. But our parents blocked the door, saying we all needed to talk things out. Max stood up and gave a speech about how sorry he was, and how he'd been going to therapy to work on his issues. He even had a letter from his therapist talking about his progress. Our parents nodded approvingly, and some of our aunts and uncles who were there started telling Lillian she should give Max another chance. I couldn't take it anymore. I raised my voice, something I rarely do, and told everyone that they were enabling an abuser. I reminded them of the nights Lillian had cried herself to sleep, of the bruises she'd tried to hide, of the way Max had systematically isolated her from everyone who cared about her. The room fell silent. Lillian started crying, and our parents looked shocked at my outburst. Max tried to approach Lillian, but I stepped between them. I told him to leave and never contact our family again. To my surprise, it was our Uncle Bill, usually the quietest one in the family, who stood up and told Max it was time for him to go. After Max left, the family dinner turned into a heated discussion. Some relatives sided with me, while others thought I was being too harsh. Lillian sat silently through most of it, looking overwhelmed and confused. Now I'm at a loss for what to do. Lillian is staying with me again, but she's hurt and confused by our parents' actions. She keeps asking me if she's overreacting, if maybe Max really has changed. I'm trying to be supportive, but I'm also terrified that she'll go back to him. I'm angry at Max for manipulating everyone, and I'm disappointed in our parents for falling for his act. I feel like I'm the only one trying to protect Lillian, but I'm worried I'm pushing her away in the process. Some of our relatives have been calling, saying I'm being too controlling, and that I should let Lillian make her own decisions. Am I overreacting? Should I back off and let Lillian make her own choices, even if I think they're dangerous? How do I deal with our parents who seem to have forgotten all about Max's abuse? I'm torn between wanting to support my sister and feeling like I'm fighting a losing battle against my own family. I love Lillian more than anything, and I can't bear the thought of her going back to an abusive relationship. But I also don't want to control her life or make decisions for her. I'm scared that if I push too hard, she'll shut me out completely, and I won't be able to help her if she needs me. This whole situation has made me question everything I thought I knew about our family. How can the parents who taught us to stand up for ourselves now be telling Lillian to give her abuser another chance? How can the extended family who always supported us now be calling me controlling for trying to protect my sister? I'm exhausted, angry, and scared. I don't know what the right thing to do is anymore. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since my last post, and I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. Your comments helped me feel less alone and gave me the strength to keep fighting for Lillian. After the disastrous family dinner, Lillian decided to stay with me for a while longer. We had many long, emotional conversations about her relationship with Max and our parents' reaction. Lillian admitted that she was still struggling with her feelings for Max. She said she knew logically that going back to him would be a mistake, but emotionally, she missed the good times they had shared. I tried to be patient and understanding, reminding her that abusers often mix in moments of kindness to keep their victims hopeful. We talked about the cycle of abuse and how Max's current behavior, the apologies, the promises to change, was just another part of that cycle. During this time, I also had several heated phone calls with our parents. They insisted that they only wanted what was best for Lillian and that they believed in second chances. I reminded them of all the times they had taught us to stand up for ourselves and others, asking how this situation was any different. These conversations often ended in frustration on both sides. However, the real shock came when I received a call from our cousin, Sarah, 26F. Sarah and I had always been close, almost like a third sister in our family. She told me that Max had reached out to her on social media, trying to get information about Lillian. Sarah, who didn't know the full story, had innocently shared that Lillian was staying with me. I was furious that Max was still trying to worm his way back into Lillian's life, but I was even more upset when Sarah told me the rest of her conversation with Max. Apparently, Max had been telling everyone in our extended family that Lillian was mentally unstable and that I was manipulating her to turn against him and our parents. He painted himself as the concerned boyfriend just trying to help his girlfriend through a difficult time. Sarah said that several family members had been in touch with our parents, expressing concern about Lillian's well-being and my influence on her. I was stunned. Not only was Max trying to gaslight Lillian, but he was now attempting to turn our entire family against us. I immediately called our parents to confront them about this, but to my shock, They seemed to believe Max's version of events. They accused me of isolating Lillian and suggested that maybe she did need professional help. Feeling betrayed and angry, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I reached out to some of Lillian's old friends, people she had lost touch with during her relationship with Max. Many of them were relieved to hear from Lillian and shared their own concerns about Max's behavior. One friend, Melissa, told me about a night 2 years ago when she had witnessed Max yelling at Lillian in a parking lot after a party. Max had been angry that Lillian was talking to her male co-workers and had grabbed her arm hard enough to leave bruises. Melissa said she had tried to intervene, but Lillian had begged her not to say anything, insisting it was just a misunderstanding. Another friend, Alex, shared screenshots of conversations where Lillian had confided in him about Max's controlling behavior. In one message, Lillian had written about how Max had taken her credit cards, saying he needed to protect her from overspending. With their help, we were able to gather a substantial amount of evidence of Max's abusive behavior. Screenshots of controlling text messages, testimonies from friends who had witnessed his outbursts, and even a police report that Lillian had filed but later withdrawn under pressure from Max. Armed with this information, I organized a family meeting. I invited our parents, Max, and several other family members who had been contacted by Max. Lillian was nervous, but agreed it was time to confront everything head-on. The meeting was intense. I presented all the evidence we had gathered, and Lillian bravely shared her experiences. She talked about the night Max had pushed her down the stairs and then convinced her it was an accident. She described how he would check her phone multiple times a day and accuse her of cheating if she took too long to respond to his messages. Max tried to defend himself, but his excuses fell flat in the face of such overwhelming proof. Our parents, seeing the full extent of Max's manipulation for the first time, were horrified and ashamed of their actions. However, the meeting took an unexpected turn when Max, realizing he was cornered, made a shocking confession. He admitted to everything but then revealed that he had been struggling with severe mental health issues that he had hidden from everyone, including Lillian. He talked about a traumatic childhood and undiagnosed bipolar disorder. He broke down, saying he knew his behavior was inexcusable, but that he had been too ashamed to seek help. This revelation left everyone stunned. Lillian, who had been so sure of her decision to leave Max, now looked conflicted. Our parents, who moments ago had been apologizing for doubting Lillian, now seemed unsure of how to proceed. Some family members, including our Aunt Karen, suggested that Max deserved another chance if he got professional help. They argued that mental illness could explain, though not excuse, his behavior, and that with proper treatment, he might be able to change. Others, like Uncle Bill, maintained that regardless of the reasons, Max's behavior was abusive, and Lillian needed to prioritize her own safety and well-being. Lillian herself seems torn. She told me later that part of her feels sympathetic towards Max and wonders if she should support him through his mental health journey. Another part of her is angry that he's using mental illness as an excuse for his abusive behavior. I'm writing this update feeling more confused than ever. While I'm relieved that the truth about Max's abuse is finally out in the open, I'm worried about the impact of his mental health revelation. Lillian seems to be wavering in her resolve, and some family members are suggesting that Max deserves another chance if he gets professional help. I still believe that Lillian needs to stay away from Max, regardless of the reasons behind his behavior. Mental illness might explain some of his actions, but it doesn't make them any less harmful or abusive. I'm worried that if Lillian goes back to him, even with the promise of therapy and treatment, she'll end up trapped in the same cycle of abuse. But I can see that this new information has complicated things for everyone involved. I'm trying to stay strong for Lillian, but I'm worried about what will happen next. Lillian has started seeing a therapist to help her process everything, which I think is a positive step. Our parents have apologized to both of us for doubting Lillian's story and pushing her to reconcile with Max. They've promised to be more supportive in the future, but I can tell they're still struggling with guilt and confusion. Am I wrong for thinking that Max's mental health issues don't excuse his abusive behavior? How do I support Lillian through this without pushing her away? And how do I deal with family members who now think Max deserves sympathy and a second chance? I'm committed to standing by Lillian no matter what she decides, but I'm scared of what might happen if she chooses to give Max another chance. Any advice on how to navigate this complicated situation would be greatly appreciated. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I'm still reeling from everything that's happened. After the family meeting where Max revealed his mental health struggles, things got even more complicated. Lillian, influenced by our parents and some family members, decided to give Max another chance, on the condition that he seek professional help and attend couples therapy with her. I was against this decision, but Lillian insisted that she needed to try one last time for her own peace of mind. I reluctantly stepped back, though I made it clear to Lillian that I would always be there for her if she needed me. Over the next few weeks, Max seemed to be making an effort. He started seeing a therapist, and from what Lillian told me, he was making progress in their couples therapy sessions. Lillian moved back in with Max, which was hard for me to accept. I tried to stay in touch with her regularly, but I could tell she was keeping things from me. When we did talk, she would focus on the positive changes Max was making, like how he was learning to communicate better, or how he was working on managing his anger. Our parents were cautiously optimistic about the situation. They told me I needed to trust Lillian's judgment and give Max a chance to prove himself. I felt like I was going crazy, being the only one who still saw Max as a threat. About a month ago, I received a call that turned everything upside down. It was from a woman named Megan, 29F, who claimed to be Max's ex-girlfriend. She had found out about Max's relationship with Lillian through mutual friends and felt compelled to reach out. Megan revealed that Max had been abusive towards her as well, using the same tactics of emotional manipulation and control. She had left him 2 years ago, just before he started dating Lillian. The most shocking part was that Max had used the same mental health excuse with Megan when she tried to leave him. She told me how Max had claimed to have bipolar disorder and promised to get help, only to revert to his abusive behavior once she agreed to stay. I was furious. I immediately told Lillian about Megan's call, but to my surprise, Lillian already knew about her. Max had apparently told Lillian about his crazy ex who had made up lies about him. Lillian, still wanting to believe in Max's redemption, was hesitant to trust Megan's story. Feeling frustrated and desperate, I decided to do some digging of my own. I reached out to Megan and asked her to share any evidence she had of Max's abusive behavior. She sent me screenshots of threatening messages, photos of property Max had damaged during arguments, and even a copy of a restraining order she had filed against him. The evidence was overwhelming. There were messages where Max threatened to hurt himself if Megan left him, just like he had done with Lillian. There were photos of a smashed laptop and a hole punched in a wall, results of Max's angry outbursts. The restraining order detailed incidents of physical abuse that made my stomach turn. Armed with this new information, I confronted Max directly. I arranged to meet him at a coffee shop, away from Lillian. When I showed him the evidence from Megan, I expected him to deny everything or get angry. Instead, to my shock, Max broke down and admitted everything. He confessed that he had lied about getting help before, and that his mental health excuse was just another manipulation tactic. He told me that he knew he had a problem, but he was too scared to actually seek help. He said he loved Lillian but didn't know how to stop his abusive behavior. I was stunned by his confession but knew I had to act quickly. I immediately called Lillian and our parents to tell them what I had discovered. I asked them all to meet me at our parents' house. When I arrived, Lillian was already there, looking worried and confused. Our parents seemed apprehensive. I laid out everything I had learned from Megan and Max's confession. Lillian was devastated, but also angry, not just at Max, but at herself for falling for his lies again. Our parents were mortified, realizing how close they had come to pushing Lillian back into an abusive relationship. Lillian left the house that night and went to stay with our Aunt Lisa. She filed for a restraining order against Max the next day. Our parents, racked with guilt, have been trying to make amends for doubting Lillian and me. The extended family is split. Some, like Aunt Karen, still believe that Max deserves another chance and that we're being too harsh. Others, including Uncle Bill, are horrified by the truth and have been incredibly supportive of Lillian. Now we're dealing with the fallout. Lillian is safe, but she's struggling with trust issues and blaming herself for going back to Max. She started intensive therapy to work through her trauma. I've been trying to support her as much as I can, reminding her that Max's actions are not her fault and that she showed incredible strength in leaving him. Our parents are devastated. They've apologized repeatedly to both Lillian and me, but I can tell they're having a hard time forgiving themselves. Dad has been going to therapy to work through his feelings of guilt, and Mom has thrown herself into researching domestic abuse, trying to understand how she missed the signs. As for Max, we haven't heard from him directly since I confronted him. We found out through mutual acquaintances that he left town shortly after Lillian filed the restraining order. Part of me is relieved that he's gone, but another part worries that he'll just move on to manipulate and abuse someone else. I'm relieved that the truth is finally out and that Lillian is safe, but I'm also exhausted and angry. I feel like I've been fighting this battle for so long, and it's taken a toll on my relationships with my family. I'm trying to work through my own feelings of anger and resentment, especially towards our parents. I'm also dealing with some guilt of my own. I keep wondering if I could have done more sooner. Should I have pushed harder when I first noticed something was off with Max? Should I have done more to prevent Lillian from going back to him after the family meeting? How do we move forward from here? How can I help Lillian heal without overwhelming her? And how do I deal with my own feelings of anger and resentment towards our parents and the family members who doubted us? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I'm finally feeling like we're on the path to healing. After the truth about Max came out, our family went through a difficult period of adjustment and reconciliation. Lillian spent the first few months in intensive therapy, working through her trauma and rebuilding her self-esteem. It was hard to see her struggle, but I'm proud of how far she's come. She's slowly regaining her confidence and has even started volunteering at a local domestic violence shelter, using her experience to help others. One of the biggest changes has been Lillian's decision to pursue her dream of becoming a pastry chef. She enrolled in a culinary program and has been thriving. Watching her rediscover her passion for baking has been incredible. She often brings over her latest creations for us to try, and it's wonderful to see her eyes light up when she talks about new recipes she's learned. Our parents have been working hard to rebuild their relationship with both Lillian and me. They've attended family therapy sessions with us, where we've had some tough but necessary conversations about trust, support, and respecting boundaries. It's been a slow process, but I can see genuine change in their attitudes and behavior. Dad has become involved with a men's group that focuses on preventing domestic violence. He's been educating himself about the signs of abuse and how to be a better ally to survivors. Mom has started volunteering at the same shelter as Lillian, wanting to support her daughter and make amends for her past mistakes. As for the extended family, we've had to make some difficult decisions. Those who continued to support Max or doubt Lillian's story, even after all the evidence came to light, are no longer part of our lives. It was hard to cut ties, especially with Aunt Karen, who had been like a second mother to us growing up. But we realized it was necessary for our healing process. Uncle Bill and his wife have been incredibly supportive throughout this whole ordeal. They've become a sort of surrogate parents to Lillian and me, offering a listening ear and unwavering support when things get tough with our parents. On a personal note, I've been working on setting better boundaries and taking care of my own mental health. The stress of the past year took a toll on me, and I realized I needed to focus on my own well-being too. I've started seeing a therapist to work through my feelings of anger and resentment, and it's been incredibly helpful. I've also been trying to reconnect with friends and hobbies that I had neglected while focusing on Lillian's situation. I've joined a local hiking group and have been spending more time outdoors, which has been great for clearing my head and reducing stress. There have been some unexpected positive outcomes from this ordeal. Lillian and I have become closer than ever, and our bond as sisters has strengthened. We've also connected with a community of survivors and advocates, which has been a source of support and empowerment for both of us. Max is out of our lives for good. The restraining order is in place, and as far as we know, he's moved to another state. We've heard rumors that he's tried to contact some mutual acquaintances, but thankfully most people now know the truth about him. Looking back, I realize how close we came to losing Lillian to an abusive relationship, and how important it is to trust your instincts when something feels off. I'm grateful that I didn't give up on her, even when it seemed like everyone else had. We're not fully healed yet, and I know we still have a long way to go. There are still days when Lillian struggles with self-doubt, or when I feel a surge of anger towards our parents, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. Lillian is rediscovering herself and her passions, our family is slowly rebuilding trust, and I'm learning to take care of myself while still being there for others. To anyone who might be going through a similar situation, I want to say, don't give up. It might feel like you're fighting a losing battle, but the truth has a way of coming out. Stand by your loved ones, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to seek help when you need it. Thank you to everyone who supported us through this journey. Your advice and encouragement made a real difference in our lives.